Greetings, everyone. Jack and Margy Flynn here. We have been teaching the Constitution for a very, very long time in this country. We started as teenagers, so that was quite some time ago.
Quite some time ago,
And
yeah.
it's not only teaching the Constitution, it's teaching people how to use the Constitution effectively against errant governments in this country. And every government in this country without fail is an errant government. Every single one of them, okay? Corporations are the same way, anti-constitutional. The entire system is totally and completely anti-constitutional all across the board. Now, all these public offices, these public workers, these public servants have taken oaths to support and defend the Constitution. None of them do. Do you know anyone who does? I don't. I've been doing this for 70 years. I haven't met one politician, one public officer, one cop. Well, no, a few cops. I've met a few cops, very few, who will abide by their oaths. But they're so few and far between, they don't even show up in any measurement scale. Bottom line is the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Everyone's taken an oath to that Constitution as required by Article 6 of the Constitution. And that states that all oath takers are bound to the Constitution by oath and must uphold the Constitution over any other form of law, lesser law, state codes, rules, regulations, what have you, and the Constitution itself, meaning the unconstitutional amendments like Section 1 of the 14th Amendment. No jurisdiction in this country, not one, upholds the Constitution and enforces the Constitution. Every one of them uphold the tenets of the Communist Manifesto and the tenets of communism itself, and they enforce those tenets upon the American people. So, folks, you're living in a fraud. America had a great beginning. It had a wonderful beginning. We had a wonderful Constitution. We had a wonderful Articles of Confederation, okay? We did not have a wonderful first president, unfortunately, because he and his crew initiated the first central bank in this country, totally prohibited by the Constitution. And from that point on, your government at all levels has been anti-constitutional. What we're trying to do is get the country, the people, the focus of the people back to constitutional governance, because without constitutional governance, we're cooked. Now, Margy has a few words.
Yes. Okay. Simply put, to add to what Jack has just said, our rightful constitutional republic has been hijacked because the people who took office and executed the duties of their offices did an end run around the Constitution. You could call it extra constitutional, you could call it anti-constitutional, you could call it unconstitutional. Doesn't matter the terminology that you use, because the bottom line is that none of the public servants who are holding offices are upholding the Constitution and the rights that the Constitution guarantees to the people, including due process of law. And that's a big term that we're going to get into in depth as we go along with these segments. But you have to understand that due process is something that every single American is entitled to, yet they don't get it on a routine basis, and they never question it because they don't understand what it means. They've accepted the dictates, and they are dictates of these administrative statutes and codes and regulations and rules, whether it's, how many cars you can have parked in your garage, whether you have to use parking meters or not, whether or not you can go a certain way on a street at a certain time of day. All of these are administrative in nature. And some would argue, well, you need a certain amount of regulation because people are crazy and they might do stupid things and they could put the people at risk. And I would say to a degree that can be true. But unfortunately, in the name of what we call public safety, we have abandoned our inherent rights, our individuality, and our ability to put government in its place, which is basically under the thumb of the people. You see, we the people are the de jure government, de jure meaning of law and right. So it's up to us to decide what we want. And the people who are in office, they are operating the machinery of the government that we put in place. Our Constitution has basically given us the power and the authority and the responsibility, the right and the duty to oversee whatever government does, whether it's a local school board or it's the president of the United States. We, the people, are supposed to say, you can do this or you can't. And what's the governing factor? The governing factor is the oath that these people take. Because any action that they take that is unconstitutional, that subverts the Constitution in any way, renders them unfit to serve in public office. And we'll get into that in depth when we discuss the 14th Amendment sections 3 and 4, because they basically are the remedy for unconstitutional actions on the part of government. And those actions happen every day. If we were to sit here and just, throw out instances, you'd say, oh my gosh, that happened to me, or that happened to my sister, or whatever. It's just unbelievable how far our country and our governments have strayed from the duties that are outlined for them in the Constitution. And the Constitution is a simple document. It's written in English. It doesn't need to be interpreted. What the courts can do and should do is interpret how it's applied to a situation, not to parse the words of the Constitution. It's very explicit. It says what it means, and it means what it says. And if something isn't written in there giving a certain level of authority to government, then government doesn't have that level of authority, because what's written in the Constitution is what's authorized. What isn't written is prohibited to government, because it's a document that limits the power and authority that any government can have and enforce on people. But if we don't know what our rights are, and if we don't know what their duties are to protect our rights, and the narrow path that these folks have to walk on, then they're going to stray, and they have. And they're way outside of what their lawful delegated authority is. And that authority comes from we, the people. We gave them a little bit of our authority, because when we became a country, good old King George said that we were sovereigns. The people were sovereigns, not the government, the people. So we as a people delegated a small portion of our inherent sovereignty to the people running the government, saying, you will do this in our name, and you will do it pursuant to your oath. And that's the compact, if you will, that we have with the people who are supposed to serve us. The word public servant has meaning, but we are not holding these people to service. They are basically holding us to be subservient and slaves to them and their phony system. And the reason that's happened is because people do not understand what the Constitution says, what it means, the authority that it gives the people, the limitations that it imposes on government, and the rights that it upholds. It recognizes our rights. It doesn't give us rights because our rights come from our Creator. They're inherent in us like our breath. But it does say, I recognize that you have rights, and this document protects those rights by securing the basic rights that all humans should have and exercise in the Bill of Rights, which was added after the Constitution was written and ratified. And good thing that it was, because without that, it would be really hard to argue some of the things that people need to argue to put government back in the box, in the proper place, subservient to the people. There's an order, if you will, if you can imagine, above all of us, above our earth, above all the people on it, is a creative force. You can call it whatever you want. Doesn't matter. But I think we could probably all agree that there's some kind of higher power that is amazing. We can't even fathom it, but it's created. Okay, we're under that. So as humans on this planet, sentient beings, presumably, we have the ability to organize and structure, to get together, to speak, and to reason. We reasoned that we needed protection from abusive government. So we created first the Articles of Confederation and then a constitution to rein in government and to give us some kind of structure so that we would have more than, chaos and craziness, living day-to-day lives. Thinking back to the time that it was not a very secure place to be. So we are the ones that created the Constitution. So we're standing on that Constitution. That's our foundation. And under that Constitution are all of the people who operate in government offices at every single level. They're all under that Constitution. So we are the superior and they are the inferior. And they're in place to do the things that we ask, require, and need to be safe and secure. We're going to talk about the preamble to the Constitution and what that means and what that was supposed to imbue in government and how good government is supposed to operate, because I don't think many Americans know what good government is. I don't think very many have ever seen good government. They've seen lip service. They see a lot of talking and acting, posturing, posing, and optics, but they don't really see good government because the effects are what would really demonstrate good government. And right now we have a bunch of very bad effects going on in our country. So these are the general gist of what we're going to talk about. And a lot of people, when they hear the Constitution, they kind of go blank. They think it's way over their head, or it's some boring document that's sitting on a room getting dusty in the Hall of Records or something. But it isn't. It is organic in nature because it recognizes us as flesh and blood beings. We're human beings. We live on the land. We are not corporations. We're not vessels at sea. And all of the words of art that have been used for a very long time now to deceive us are what we want to expose. And we want to substitute the deception with clarity and truth and the real law, the supreme law of the land, which is the Constitution. And if you can bear with us for some of the stuff that might seem a little boring or technical at first, when you put the pieces together and connect the dots, you'll see that you're a much more powerful being than you ever realized that you were. And if you use the Constitution wisely, as we and our students have for a very long time, you'll be amazed at the results that you can obtain. And if we do this as a people, if we unite, understanding that we're all Americans, regardless of our ideologies, religions, political affiliations, whatever, we're all Americans. And we have a precious country that is about to be taken away from us if we don't step up to the plate and hit it out of the park for America. So that's what this is going to be about, hopefully.
We keep things as simple and as direct and to the point as possible, okay? That's how we win cases. Now, I said we've been doing this for a long time. Yes, we have. We've also been very effective for a long time. We have a pretty damn good track record. Over the decades, past 6, almost 7 decades, we and our people, not Margy and I alone, but we and our people have won thousands of cases against all forms of government in this country, federal, state, and local, all across the country, okay? None of us use lawyers. We speak for ourselves. Our own people speak for themselves. And most of the people who came to us were just average people. Yeah, we had a lot of so-called intelligentsia, a lot of very bright people, and, you know, professional people come to us as well, all right? They were more difficult to work with because they have preconceived ideas.
Yeah.
The average guy, if he's really interested in learning, can learn and learn well. And most of these people were average guys who won tremendous cases against governments, federal, state, and local, and corporations, banks across this country. Okay, so these are our methods. I agree, but these methods are based in and on the Constitution, and the methods are devised to show people how they can use the Constitution as the Constitution was intended to be used. So for those who are really serious, who want to learn, okay, to number one, help the country, because the country is in deep kimchi. We all know that. Most of us.
We should know it. If we don't, we're asleep at the switch.
The past 2.5 years or so have shown that America is not the country everyone thinks it is. Okay, it's become a communist dictatorship, and believe it or not, it's been a communist dictatorship for a long time. People never knew it, and we'll get into all this. Everything we say, we back up. Okay, we can show you how it's a communist dictatorship and how it came into being as a communist dictatorship. But that's down the road when we get into that particular subject. But let me just state one thing That is a reiteration of what I said before. There is no jurisdiction in this country, none, that uphold the Constitution. Every one of them upholds the tenets of communism and the Communist Manifesto, and further enforces those upon the American people. If you disagree with that, take a look at reality. Take a good look at reality. Take a look at what the government is doing, what the government has been doing, and look at the state of your country and tell me it's not a communist country. Now, we want to get the country back into the constitutional position that it was when it was created. That's the focus here, okay? If you people really love America, if you love your kids, you love your grandkids, you love America, you love the Constitution, you love what America was founded to be, then this is the right place for you, okay? If you want to help yourself, okay, this is the right place for you, all right? Our focus is to help the country, not to help the people. We've helped the people for 70 years. Now we have to help the country, okay? If your focus is to make money, or if your focus is dealing with corporate law, maritime law, codes, rules, regulations, this is not the place for you, because we don't deal in that, which is why we win and other people lose. We win based upon the power and the authority of the original organic Constitution. Other people use the phony corporate law, codes, rules, regulations, and they lose constantly. I'm sorry they're losing. I really am. I like to see them win. But for them to win, come over to the constitutional side, okay? We'll be glad to help you on that. Now, let me pose something that's very simple. As we said, the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. All judges, all politicians have taken oaths to it, all right? So we have the law here on this side. We have the requirement on this side. And then once these guys or gals take the oath, what do? They immediately defy it. Every one of them, right across the country, okay? And guess what, guys? Not we, but the American people let them do it. We have to stop that. We have to stop that real fast. Now, why don't you put up our exhibit number 1? We'll show you who and what we are. Margy's going to put this up on the screen in just a minute. We are Jack and Margy Flynn, citizens of the American Constitution, okay? We have our names and our website here. We have an email address here, okay? So if you have any questions or comments after our presentation, you can email us. You can.
Is that showing? No.
No, it's not showing. That's what I was going to say. Go to where it says share screen, the arrow pointing up, and choose the document.
I just did. Let's see. Hang on. Here it is. There it is.
There you go.
Okay.
Perfect.
Got it.
Okay. We had a little glitch there, guys, but here we are, Jack and Margy Flynn. Our website is citizensoftheamericanconstitution.net. We have 2 emails there. So like I said, if you have any questions or comments after you review the podcast, by all means, give us an email or call us, and we're glad to speak with you. Now, let me specify. We've helped people all our lives. This is no longer our focus anymore. Our focus is to save our country. If you're interested in saving the country, as I said, this is the right place. If you're interested in helping yourself, this is the right place too. We will provide you all the information you need. We will speak with you over the phone. We will send you our methods. You can download our methods. It's up to you. But we don't do the work for you. I can tell you, close to 100% of the people who come to us want us to do the work for them, okay? We can't. We'd be going 24/7, 365. We can't do that. Plus, we're not attorneys. We're not lawyers.
Right.
We can't do work for anyone. We will tell you what we would do in your situation. We'll hold your hand. We'll help you along the way, okay? But we won't do the work for you. Our focus is to help the people help their own country. Now, how can you do this? You can take that off now if you want. Yep. We have people all over the country who've used our methods to get superintendents out of office, school superintendents out of office, to stop school boards, to get school boards to resign, to get school boards to change their
policies and decisions.
Yeah. We put pressure on politicians to get them out of office. When we were in New Mexico, we lived in New Mexico for 16 years. We were active there for about 10. And while we were there, and if anyone knows New Mexico, that's the Wild West, okay?
Yeah.
People shoot first, ask questions second. So
Amazing.
it was a pretty tough state to be in because it has the
Patron mentality.
well, I call it Perón.
The one guy on the
Yeah,
top and
yeah.
everybody else on the bottom,
Yeah, it's whatever he says goes.
Yeah.
So people go for that. And they were basic slaves. I mean, I hate to say it, but they were basic slaves. So we come into Las Vegas, New Mexico, one of the most corrupt cities in the world, never mind the country. I mean, the Patron mentality was enormous there.
Big time. And
people were scared to death. So we come in with a constitution, we start winning hundreds and then thousands of cases in that town and that state. And we changed the whole system. We changed the whole state, okay? While we were there, we removed about 4 dozen politicians from office based upon their constitutional violations. And we held them to account and got them out of office.
Judges, cops, bureaucrats.
Yeah, including a U.S. senator and a governor. Okay, so if we can do it, you can do it. We have the power, meaning the people have the power. But if the people don't use the power, it's not going to help them. Now, we wrote a book. People have asked us for many, many years to write a book. We've been too busy helping people to write a book, but finally, we did. And the reason we did was based upon the absolute horrible financial violence that was committed upon the American people by the American government, the U.S. government, I should say, the corporate U.S. government, and the bankers back in 2007, 2008, where somewhere over, you get different figures from different sources, but somewhere over 20 million people lost their homes during that foreclosure crisis. One of the figures was as high as 27 million. It may be higher than that. But millions of people lost their homes. We couldn't stand that. We couldn't stand to see good people losing their homes because of the corruption within the government and within the banks. So we wrote a book called Bypass the Banks. Would you put that up on this?
Yes, I will.
That's the second one.
Hang on, I got it.
It's called Bypass the Banks. It came out in July or late June and July. And it's selling pretty well. It has a #1 status right now. And the book was written in 2 parts. Number 1, to show the people the real truth as to what is going on in this country in all levels, within government, within corporations, within academia, within the think tanks, within everything, the real truth, the real fraud, the real corruption that is being perpetrated upon all of us every day, okay? And number 2, within that category, what the people can do about it. The book refers to that, and we're teaching all of that in this series. Number 2, the second part of the book was intended to help people in the next absolute economic disaster that's about to happen and the foreclosure crisis that's about to happen. It will show people how they can buy, sell, and finance homes without the bank and without governmental interference, okay? We all have to get out of the system. We have to get out of the system as much as we can. We have to get off the grid as much as we can, to use a phrase. And this book and our methods can show you how you can do that. Now, obviously, we can't do it for you. It's up to you. You either like what we say and say, yeah, I'll get into this, I'll work with it, or no, I don't like it, it's not for me. So it's all a personal decision. We all have to make a personal decision. If we're concerned about our country, if we're concerned about our lives, this book can really, really help you. Now, the book also gets into other situations beyond simple buying, selling, and financing properties without banks. It gets into how people, ordinary people, just average guys, can take a small investment and turn that small investment into an absolute fortune if they want. It's up to them. We're not into fortunes. Well, frankly, we're not into money. We like money, nothing wrong with money, but we don't do things.
We respect what it can do.
Yeah, we respect what it can do, but
it's not our driving force.
Our focus is to help people help themselves and help people help the country. okay? But for those who really want to make a fortune, I'll give you one example. A guy can take a $15,000 investment and buy one of the houses under our program, okay, in cooperation with the seller, of course. It has to be mutual agreement. And if he follows the step of the programs, which are very simple, very direct, very understandable, we don't write in high legalese, we don't write in high financial terms.
It's common
They're
sense.
basic, common sense terms written in direct, simple language that people can understand, okay? No one is going to have a problem reading this book. He can take that $15,000 investment, and if he follows the programs that are spelled out, which are marketable and simple, within 25 to 30 years, he can build that up to 2.5 billion with a B. $2.5 billion, okay?
Now remember, these are examples.
We don't
We're not making
guarantee. No, we
guarantees.
don't.
What it does is show you how you can take a small investment and through some diligence and work and common sense, really literally make a fortune for yourself or anything in between. And there's a lot of creative suggestions and solutions in the book that you won't see anyplace else that I think a lot of people can benefit from, especially now that things are getting so difficult economically for the people.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot in here. And it shows people how they can participate in joint investments, okay? Let's say you've got 3 family members and they're very dissatisfied with what's going on. And they want to do something else, but there's really, America doesn't have the opportunities it once had. I think we all know that. The opportunities have been taken away from us, okay? Financial violence has been inflicted upon us by our own government, our own banks, and our own system. So we have to take back our own power, okay? Use our own ingenuity, use our own inventiveness, our own creativity to take back that power and achieve what we want. So let's say these 3 guys say, yeah, listen, I get $5,000, but you know, what can I do with $5,000? I mean, man, I really can't make any investment. And the other 2 guys say, yeah, well, I have $5,000 too. And then one reads the book and says, well, look, here's a program spelled out in this book. We can take the $5,000 from all of us, put it into a $15,000 investment. We all own 1/3 of that investment. We buy this house, we sell it, and we start buying other houses. And the money we invested comes back to us plus our profit. So we're investing not only the original investment, but the profit we made from the original investment. And they go on year after year after year after year. And pretty soon, if they really follow the program, you're looking at $2.5, $3.0 billion, which is a lot of money for anyone. I don't care who you are, that's a lot of money. And think of the good you can do for your family, the good you can do for your country
community,
with that money, and the good you can do for people with that money. And this is another position in the book. The people who really get into the investment programs and start investing are doing several things. Number one, they're helping people do things that are not possible within the usual system. Why? Well, the usual system has stringent requirements, stringent regulations. You know, you go to a bank, you want money from a bank, you know, they'll give you a list of things that you can't even conceive of. Okay, now some people can, most people can't. And they put many, many restrictions and requirements upon you. And mortgage rates go up constantly. And there are other situations by which it's at the drop of a hat, they can seize your house and take your property, take all of your assets, take all of your seed money, take your investment you've been in for maybe 15 years or so, and walk away with it. And you've got nothing. Okay. With our program, that doesn't help because it's a people situation. So if these 3 guys were to put their money together and follow the program, that's what they're looking at. Now let's take another situation. Let's say kids are going to college. Okay, let's say they're in graduate school, they're in business graduate school, and they're in a fraternity. Okay, I used to be in a fraternity in college. SAE, if there are any SAEs out there, Phi Alpha. They were good days. Anyway, if the kids in the fraternity or a certain number of the kids in the fraternity say, look, there's a there are programs in this book we can work with. You know, we know business, know how to invest, we know what to do, we know the markets. We can all participate in this program. Okay, so if we're talking $15,000, each guy could put in $1,500. All right, you got 10 in there, but you've got a $15,000 investment. Then you go out and you do the program, and over 25 years, you're looking at $2.5 billion. Now, there are many other programs in here that allow people to take a look at something that is not really being done right now. Okay, none of this stuff is being done. The only thing that's being done is the old position in which the buyer and seller agree that, you know, the seller will say, I'll sell you the house and I'll carry paper. Okay. Yes, that position is in the book, but it's greatly expanded and it goes well beyond that. Okay. We have programs, for instance, swap programs. Let's say an old couple, you know, someone our age.
Who you calling old?
Or someone Mel's age. He's not old either, but we'll use Mel's age.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. They say, yeah, we're getting ready to retire now. We've got this house. It's huge. It's 4,000 square feet. We've got 5 acres here. We don't need the 5 acres. It's worth $4 million. Let's just sell the house. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So if they sell the house, what happens to the $4 million? Well, the tax man comes, and then they've got 5 kids and they've got grandkids, and everyone wants money. And pretty soon that sales price dwindles down to almost nothing. I mean, there's still something there, but not the seed money you need to do something different. So let's say that old couple said, well, maybe we'll sell this house and we'll buy a smaller house. Okay. And maybe there's some couple out there that says, you know, a young couple, they've got 3 kids. And,
one coming and they need a bigger place.
The guy's in the tech industry, he's making some money, but he's not making a fortune. But they want a bigger house, okay, and they can afford $4 million. They say, well, maybe we sell this house and we buy a $4 million house. And somehow the old couple comes together with the young couple, and there are methods and ways you can do that through the internet and through different sites. And you effectuate a swap. So the old couple says, yeah, we'll swap our $4 million house with you for your $400,000 house, right? But we're not going to give you that. You're going to give us a note for $3.6 million, and you're going to pay it to us over 15 or 20 years, okay? Neither couple had to go to a broker. Neither couple had to go to a bank. Neither couple had to go to an appraiser. Neither couple had to do anything because they were working directly amongst themselves. Tremendous tax savings in that. The old couple gets the house they want, and they're getting a pension of, I don't know, $12,000 a month or something like that. Anyone can live in 12 grand a month, or whatever the figure happens to come out to be. So there are a lot of programs for everyone. The main situation is we're trying to get the people to save their own government. Okay. So let's get into some of those situations now. Would you take that off the screen? We're going to discuss a couple of things that might shock you. Might shock you quite a bit. Put up Exhibit 3A. Okay.
Gotta pull it up. Hang on.
And this is coming up on the screen a little bit. People think that the country is a free country. People think that they're free. Well, if you have excessive rules and regulations and restrictions upon you, you don't live in a free country and you're not free, okay? That's just the way it is. And if you take a look what happens over the past 2.5 years, what has happened over the past 2.5 years, most of us realize we're not free, okay? Well, when we're not free, what do? Do we just take the slavery state that's inserted upon us by the U.S. government, which is not a proper government, and we'll get into that. But briefly, well, let's get into a little bit of it right now. The Organic Constitution was created in 1787, the original Organic Constitution, the Constitution for the United States of America, okay? The Bill of Rights came 4 years later in 1791, okay? Now, that Constitution cannot conflict with itself at all, period. Number two, if that Constitution is going to be changed in any way, it has to be changed by the authority vested in the Constitution to change the Constitution. Okay? Well, along came a group of traitors, domestic enemies, bankers, foreigners, Khazars, okay, bad news people. And they set up the War of Northern Aggression that was planned for a long time, which most people call the Civil War. Then they set up a constitution in 1871 called the United States Constitution, okay? The United States Constitution is not the original Constitution, okay?
It looks the same, but it isn't.
No. There's a word change in the title, and there are slight changes throughout the language, okay? The second Constitution in 1871 was set up by the government and the power interests, vested interests, power forces, whatever you want to call them, okay, that exert tremendous influence upon government. And this second Constitution conflicted with the first Constitution, which is totally prohibited, and was set up by a government that had no constitutional authority to set up this second Constitution. And in this second Constitution, okay, the provisions of Article 1, Section 1 of the 14th Amendment were upheld, which made all people in this country, get it, all people, I don't care who you are, where you live, all people U.S. citizens.
No.
We're not U.S. citizens, okay? They declared all the people as U.S. citizens under the authority of that Constitution, when we are actually American citizens under the authority of the original organic Constitution established in 1787 as amended with the Bill of Rights in 1791, okay? So
the second Constitution is corporate in nature.
Yes.
Because it represents the structure body of DC, which is a corporation. And that's a separate entity from the United States of America, the land. Big difference. People need to understand they're two separate entities. And they deceptively made it look like all of us are under the jurisdiction of DC, which is a corporate entity. And they, through sleight of hand, converted cities and towns and states into municipal corporations and made everyone think that they were citizens under those corporations and subject to the dictates of those corporations. And we're not.
No, we're not.
It was all done in fraud. There was no disclosure, and there was no lawful authority to do any of it.
And that corporation set up America as a corporate state, okay, under a corporate government called the U.S. government, okay?
Yeah.
That's a fraud. That's a total fraud. And as far as we're concerned, Throckmorton was correct a long time ago. Fraud vitiates everything, okay? So we don't uphold the fraud. We don't argue the fraud. We don't present the fraud. We expose the fraud for what it is. So we don't use any laws, rules, or regulations that come from the corporate government. We only use the original authority of the original law of this land, which is the Constitution for the United States of America. Now, people think that this government is a just government. It's not. Okay, again, I repeat, past 2.5 years should show people it's not a just government. People are beginning to catch on. The average guy is beginning to catch on. I mean, it's hard not to catch on, okay? It's everywhere. And a lot of you folks who have been in this for a long time know exactly what we're talking about. But the newbies, the new ones, don't. So let's move along a little bit. We're going to talk about some court decisions here that will shock your brains. Okay, Margy will read them for you.
Okay. The reason we're bringing in this now is to really bring it home to the people that on every level they are being lied to and cheated and deceived and misrepresented and defrauded. And it's egregious to us that this is going on, and it's had free reign over the country for decades because the people don't understand it. And so they haven't voiced any opposition to it. Now, the few people who had the misfortune to get involved in situations that resulted from government intervention or arrest or what have you, understand how bad it is because they expected to be exonerated. And most of them were not because the truth didn't matter. The law of the land didn't matter because they didn't argue it right there. Most of them didn't even argue it at all because they didn't realize just how corrupt the system is. So this is a little bit about prosecutorial misconduct. And it's going to sound crazy, but these are actual cases and these are actual excerpts of the gist of the case. And when you hear it, you're going to say, oh my God.
And this gives you an example of what the U.S. government thinks of the people and the courts as well.
Well, the first case is Imbler versus Pactman. And this case unconstitutionally held that prosecutors can violate constitutional rights of a defendant in prosecuting a case, and the prosecutor may knowingly use false testimony and suppress evidence. Think about that. False testimony and suppressing of evidence, and they're exonerated for it. Now, this pertained to a petitioner who was convicted of murder, and he unsuccessfully petitioned for a state habeas corpus on the basis of the fact that the respondent prosecuting attorney's revelation of newly discovered evidence, and so he charged that the respondent had knowingly used false testimony and suppressed material evidence at the petitioner's trial. So that's unfair. That's a violation of due process, violation of the guy's rights. So the petitioner then filed a federal habeas corpus petition on the same allegations because he didn't get the state one, and ultimately did get his release. He then brought an action against the respondent and others under 42 U.S.C. Section 1983, which is a statute, seeking damages for loss of liberty allegedly caused by unlawful prosecution. But the district court held that the respondent was immune from liability under Section 1983, and the Court of Appeals affirmed that decision. So the case essentially held that a state prosecuting attorney who, as here, acted within the scope of his duties in initiating and pursuing a criminal prosecution and in presenting the state's case is absolutely immune from a civil suit for damages under Section 1983 for alleged deprivations of the accused's constitutional rights. Think about that. Immune for doing criminal actions against a defendant. Now, Section 1983 is to be read in harmony with general principles of tort immunities, meaning for lawsuits, and defenses rather than in derogation of them. And that was another decision from another case called Tenney v. Brandhove. Now, the same considerations of public policy that underlie the common rule of absolute immunity of a prosecutor from a suit for malicious prosecution likewise dictate absolute immunity under Section 1983. Although such immunity leaves the genuinely wronged criminal defendant without civil redress against a prosecutor whose malicious or dishonest action deprives him of liberty, the alternative of qualifying a prosecutor's immunity would, get this, disserve the broader public interest in that it would prevent the vigorous and fearless performance of the prosecutor's duty that is essential to the proper functioning of the criminal justice system and would often prejudice criminal defendants by skewing post-conviction judicial decisions that should be made with the sole purpose of ensuring justice. What a load of crap. Total crap.
Some of you might have gone to courts and experienced similar situations, or some of you might know people who've gone to court and experienced different situations. Now, hopefully you can see why we do not use corporate law. We don't use it. We stay away from it as far as we can get, okay? The problem here is that the fellow who was in prison, the fellow who was wrongly convicted, okay, did not use the constitutional methods properly. He spoke of the Constitution, but his lawyer didn't present it properly. You know, speaking of the Constitution and enforcing the Constitution are two different things. The bottom line, however, is the courts and the law will protect the criminal prosecutor, the criminal judge, the criminal attorney who works for the system.
Yes.
Stay away from private corporate law. Stay within the Constitution. because the private corporate law is the system's law that protects the system, and you don't have a chance.
And the system's in business to convict people. And there are incentives and reasons for that too, which will be made clearer as we go further along, because we're going to discuss about how these guys get incentives, AKA bribes, and it'll absolutely boil your blood. Now, here's another case, Davis versus Grusmeyer. The court held that it is okay for the prosecutor to violate the constitutional rights of the defendant and is immune from prosecution for so doing. Now ask yourself, what kind of court that's supposed to be overseen by a judge who took an oath to support the Constitution is going to make a statement like that and render a decision? No such court should ever exist in a country that's supposed to be a constitutional republic. This is an abomination.
Unfortunately, this exists all the time across the country, every day, thousands and thousands of times each and every day. And it goes back to the original position. Here's the Constitution that requires obedience. All right. Here's the oath they've taken to the Constitution that says they will be obedient. And as soon as they get over here, they defy it. Okay. None of these people, and I mean none of them, have any constitutional authority to defy the Constitution. But the lawyers are not going to argue that, and the people don't know how to argue that. So the states are going to use state law, federal law, state procedure, whatever you want, codes, rules, and regulations, and really bury the citizens. And it's happening all the time.
And that's because the citizens don't know that if there is no constitutional authority for an action by a prosecutor or a judge, then there is no authority, period, because the Constitution is the first law that they are duty bound to uphold, and it supersedes everything else. Okay. Next short one, Maya v. Morris. Prosecutor may file charges without doing any investigation. Think about that. Some poor guy gets called up, arrested, whatever, and they do no investigation to see whether or not the accusations against him are real, genuine. What if somebody's got a grudge, an ex-girlfriend, ex-wife or something? This is an abomination that should never stand, and no court should uphold it. Jones v. Shanklin, this is out of the Ninth Circuit Federal Court of Appeals. Prosecutor may file charges outside of his jurisdiction. Really? Prosecutor may knowingly offer perjured testimony and may suppress evidence, yet is immune for doing all of this. Since when is it lawful to suborn perjury? No lawyer should do that, no matter what his title is. This is insane.
And no judge should accept it.
Correct.
They do all the time.
Hensel v. Gretstein, Fifth Circuit, Federal Court of Appeals. Prosecutor can suppress exculpatory evidence and be held immune for so doing. Exculpatory means evidence that would show that the person on trial is innocent. Okay? And that's another thing that happens all the time. They suppress evidence because they want the caller, they want the conviction. Ashelman versus Polk, Ninth Circuit. The prosecutor is immune from lawsuits for conspiring with the judge to determine the outcome of the proceedings. In other words, to predetermine the outcome, to set up how it's going to go. Where's the fair trial? Where's the justice? Where's the due process of law? Doesn't exist. Norton v. Liddell, 10th Federal Circuit. The prosecutor may knowingly file charges against an innocent person for crimes that never occurred.
Isn't that interesting?
Are you kidding me?
They can grab anyone right off the street and bag him for anything.
Yeah.
For anything.
Free country.
And get away with it.
Sure.
How many people in prison are innocent, not guilty?
Lots.
Okay. Quite a few of them.
Lots.
You know that we have the largest prison population in the world percentage-wise?
Mhm.
Percentage-wise,
Yeah, we
it's
do.
enormous.
It's ridiculous. Pinder v. Johnson, Fourth Circuit Court. The court held that in general, the public has no constitutional right to be protected from harm inflicted by third parties. This means that the police who are paid by the public have no duty to protect the public. Think about that. Why are we paying a police force if that police force has no responsibility whatsoever to protect the people? We're paying them because they're keeping the people in line. And it's all part of the administrative agency mentality that came into place when the corporate constitution was passed and everything went from legitimate de jure governance into corporatized, administrative. And it's not the same thing. It's an agency mentality. And none of this is authorized in the Constitution. There is no authorization for a police force in the Constitution. So all of them basically are unconstitutional. Now, this case is interesting too. Ketchum v. Alameda County and Bowers v. versus DeVito. The district court had granted a summary judgment on this for all defendants, and they ordered the complaint to be dismissed. With regard to private defendants, the basis for the court's action was an affidavit of a qualified expert which states that they used all due professional care in their treatment of Vanda. The plaintiff's failure to offer any counter affidavit shows that there is no genuine issue of material fact regarding these defendants' due care. And the reason we highlighted this is that we've been harping on affidavits for a long time. You've heard us speak about them and why. And this demonstrates what we're talking about. If you submit an affidavit to the court and it's not rebutted by another sworn affidavit based in fact and law that is true and genuine, your affidavit supersedes it. And this is why we use this methodology to stop errant government, because they cannot argue and counter an affidavit that's based in truth and fact and law. And this is a very important thing to remember as we go down the road. We're going to talk a little bit about affidavits and how important they are and how simple they are as a tool to use to hold government accountable for its actions.
We've used affidavits for a very long time, very successfully for a very long time, but we use a different type of affidavit from that which most people use, okay? Now, theoretically, it's all theory because it doesn't exist in reality, but theoretically, the courts convene basically for two reasons. Number one is to hear the truth, okay? That's a joke. They don't want to hear the truth, but they claim they want to hear the truth. Number two, they claim, and this is true, they convene to hear matters in controversy. Well, sometimes they do, most of the times they don't, because a lot of these cases are fixed before they ever start.
The predetermined outcome that we mentioned a little while ago.
It's like football. I played a lot of football in my life. I love football. The football games today, the NFL are rigged. I mean, I hate to say it, but they're rigged. The outcome of the game is known before it even starts. Now, that's not true of every game, but that's true from the information I have, okay? A lot of things are rigged in life. Court cases are rigged all the time. Attorneys sell cases, they give cases away, they drop their clients, they protect the system, they put their clients in jail. It's a nightmare, okay? Now, talking about judges and what judges do, what they should do, and what they actually do.
We didn't get the ruling. I want to finish that because this is important.
All right.
The gist of this ruling, okay, and this is another one that drives us crazy, says there's a constitutional right not to be murdered by a state officer, for the state violates the 14th Amendment when its officer, acting under color of law, deprives a person of life without due process of law. Brazier v. Cherry. And that was out of the Fifth Circuit in 1961. But there is no constitutional right to be protected by the state against being murdered by criminals or madmen. It is monstrous if the state fails to protect its residents against such predators, but it does not violate the due process clause of the 14th Amendment, or we suppose any other provision of the Constitution. Now that's bunk. The 9th Amendment, okay, in the Bill of Rights guarantees all of the rights that weren't enumerated in the Bill of Rights. And one of those rights is to be safe and protected from harm from anybody else. And if you have an agency or an institution in place that purports to protect the people and is taking public funds to do so, then they have a duty. And we have a right to expect protection from that agency. This is a bogus decision. It's garbage. It calls the Constitution a charter of negative liberties. It tells the state to leave people alone, but it doesn't require the federal government or the state to provide services, even so elementary a service as maintaining law and order. So why have law enforcement if it's not supposed to maintain law and order? Answer me that.
And if they're supposed to leave the people alone, why do we have an IRS?
Yeah, or any other intrusive agency.
Why do we have an NSA? Why do we have passport agencies?
Right.
No, this is all bunk. But this is what the system uses against you all the time. It uses against you all the time. Okay, why don't you finish the rest of them?
I just did. That was the end of it right there.
There was, oh,
If you want to go to the judges, that's the
Yes.
next one that I was going to
yeah,
do.
this is important. We're going to the judges next.
You won't believe this. This is going to boil your blood, Mel. I'm telling you right now, it's going to absolutely make you go bananas.
Now, all these exhibits, people will be able to download them directly on our website. This way they can have them, print them out, etc.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Fantastic.
Absolutely. All right, this next one speaks about quote bribes, okay?
Incentives,
Which
yeah.
are not called bribes, but they're bribes. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
This is will gall you badly. Okay. Okay. When you read below, you're going to have to ask the following questions to determine if you're going to be treated fairly when you challenge any employment of federal government. Because the U.S. courts are considered federal agencies. Think about that, agencies. And all officers of the courts are employees. So some questions to ask would be something like this. What possibilities exist that my attorney, who is an officer of the court, meaning a federal employee, with his first duty to the court, is not receiving any secret gifts? Next question. What possibilities exist that the judge is going to be fair and impartial to any decision on my behalf? And the next one, when they took their oath of office to support and defend the Constitution, will their oath have more influence in their decision-making process than the possibilities of making an extra $35,000 to convict or get me convicted? Think about that.
Think about all of this when you go to court, okay? Which is why we do what we do and other people don't do what we do and they lose. Now go.
Now this goes into what happens, and I'll just skip around a little bit because this is important. Cash awards distort justice, you think? Yeah. Title 5, United States Code, Section 4502, and other sections of law cited herein provide for secret cash awards to federal government employees. Said secret cash awards can be paid to a judge, assistant U.S. attorneys, IRS agents, and your attorney, whose first duty is to the court in the performance of a successful prosecutions against the American people. Successful prosecutions against the American people. It says nothing about justice or truth. Successful prosecutions. Think of that. Payments to said federal employees are concealed from public scrutiny and therefore constitute bribes, a blatant conflict of interest, and abandonment of judicial neutrality, discrimination, and denial of due process of law. It is a material fact that together the IRS and prosecution accuses people of crimes and calling said actions deceitful and dishonest means, while at the same time IRS agents, U.S. attorneys, judges, and your attorney can receive secret cash awards, which are not condemned by said U.S. attorneys, who themselves also receive secret cash awards as being deceitful or dishonest means. These secret cash awards are so secret that neither the defendant, the public, the jury, nor others associated to the original action are permitted by law to scrutinize previous and current secret cash awards to said parties to determine if the promise of cash awards constitutes malfeasance, corruption, bribery, and the perversion of justice in the original action. So they can't even investigate. This is all hush-hush. So how are you going to know? These secret awards include cash awards, and they're not limited as to the number of awards that may be awarded to any one person or group. There's no limitation placed on any award. Any person or group of persons can be awarded this money, including U.S. attorneys, federal judges, the President of the United States, or anyone for that matter. The awards may be given to the same person or group each minute, each hour, every day, every week, every month, every year, or not at all. In other words, the U.S. government and the alleged Internal Revenue Service, aka the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, have a perfectly legal, not lawful, system of bribery. The bribery works against the American people of the several states of the United States of America when they expect impartial justice and there is no proof on the record to the contrary. And this is important because what gets on the record is what the judge says he can look at. The Ethics in Government Act, which was 5 U.S.C. Appendix Sections 101 et sequitur at 102, specifically forbids the disclosure of monies earned from the federal government. Furthermore, personal financial information is exempt from disclosure under the Privacy Act. So federal judges can thus be paid large sums of money beyond their published salaries authorized by Congress, privately and secretly by their employer, the federal government, with a payment statutorily dubbed in this case as an incentive award and also referred to as a cash award. So the preceding sites alone would give you enough information to support the contention that federal judges do receive cash awards, otherwise known by common Americans as bribes from their employer, the United States, as well as the federal agencies like the IRS, which isn't even really an agency, but that's another hill later. In addition, the judges are permitted to be paid up to $10,000 in, you're going to love this, erroneous payments without any obligation to return said erroneous payments. Under 4 CFR Section 91.4, which governs the flag scheme of government and a bunch of things, the director of the Administrative Office of the United States Courts may grant a waiver in whole or in part of a claim of the United States in an amount aggregating not more than $10,000 arising out of an erroneous payment. And all doubts are to be resolved in favor of the applicant, another section. A further section, an erroneous payment, the collection of which is waived pursuant to this subchapter, is deemed valid payment for all purposes. So employees of the DOJ and the U.S. attorneys are permitted the same waivers as cited above, and that's under 28 CFR, and it goes on and on and on.
I think that's enough.
The bottom line is that it shouldn't go without comment that United States attorneys and federal judges are by law entitled to secret cash awards for their contributions to this, quote, efficiency and economy. Knowing this, it should come as no surprise that U.S. attorneys and federal judges usually have their offices located in the same building, sometimes on the same floor, and in the same hallway. The law requires that a judge disqualify himself if he or she has a financial interest in the proceeding. But of course, this term of art, and it is a term of art, means something entirely different from what common Americans would consider a financial interest. And it explains what that means. And it goes into how it would be ownership in a mutual or common investment fund, and an educational or charitable fraternal organization, proprietary interest in say, a mutual insurance policy or whatever. The bottom line is that these things don't technically constitute a financial interest. The cash awards don't equate with these definitions. So technically, they don't count. But in reality, of course, they do. And think about it. I mean, would a jury who knew about these things consider that these things were not suspicious and bribes when the outcome of convicting somebody is going to line the pockets of the U.S. attorneys that are prosecuting him and the judge that's making the decision? Come on, it's a no-brainer.
What does this say about the truth that is supposed to be derived through the court system?
Yeah.
There's no truth in the court system.
They're saying we're supposed to rely upon the alleged integrity of the federal judges and others.
It's a total fraud. The whole system, the court system, was one of the worst systems in the founding of this nation.
It's insane.
Way back when, okay, people were complaining about the courts then. They're complaining about the courts now. They're horrible.
No reasonable American or American jury in their right mind would agree to such a financial arrangement when it comes to their personal freedom or the freedom of other Americans. There can be no independence, impartiality, neutrality, or integrity in a judicial system that permits and does not fully disclose these secret financial incentives, what most Americans would call bribes, for the judges and U.S. attorneys, without verifiable proof that judges and U.S. attorneys have clean hands in the original action and any other federal court action to come. So how can they be independent when they get awards? We're talking $25,000 or more undisclosed secret cash awards, and they can get other ones, other payments of $10,000 that they can just waive them as erroneous and keep the money. How can you get a fair trial?
You can't. That's the problem. There is no such thing as a fair trial in America. because, as I said before, most of these things are rigged. It's like Trump said a long time ago, the system is rigged. He's absolutely correct. The system has been rigged since the beginning, and it gets rigged more and more every day. So if you, the average American guy or gal, is going to go up against this system, you better realize your enemy. You better realize what you're facing.
Yeah.
And you really, if you want to protect yourself, should use the proper defense based on the power and the authority of the Constitution, and not case law, which they call, it's not case law
It's
at all.
case
You know,
cites.
they call it judge-created law. There's no such thing
No,
as judge
no authority.
created law.
Right.
There is no case law. It's precedent, okay? It doesn't matter what precedent says. It doesn't matter what anything says, because all of that can be used against you. The only thing that you can use in your defense is to protect yourself in the power and the authority of the Constitution. And I go back to Article 6. Article 6 requires all public officers and judges be bound to the Constitution by oath, and they must uphold the Constitution superior and supreme to any other form of law. It's that simple.
Yeah.
And if you use that very simple approach before the court and hold the judge and the U.S. attorney to the standards we hold them to by their own admissions on the public record, you can win your case if you know what you're doing. Okay? The problem is a lot of people think they know and don't. You either think you know and you don't, or you know and you do. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really
It is that simple. And it's just common sense. If you know that there are bribes, incentives, whatever you want to call them, that are being dished out for getting a conviction, you know that there's very little chance that the accused is going to get acquitted. It's impossible. And also what makes it so bad is that now these prosecutors trump up all this evidence, and they can lie, misrepresent, accept perjured testimony, the whole bit. And it's all put into the record as evidence, but you can't get anything to put in the records to show that they have a financial incentive, because all of those things are secret and you're prohibited from getting them. So there's no way that somebody can counter something like this, because they're absolutely railroaded through fraud and deception and obfuscation. It's evil.
Unless you use
The
power and
Constitution.
the authority of the
That's right.
Constitution. That's the savior for the people, because the Constitution guarantees rights. And if you can use those rights against the unconstitutional actions of your opponents, then you can show that your opponents are acting in treason. And
Yes.
that's exactly what
And
they're
you have
doing.
to do that from the very beginning, because if something like this goes to appeal, what are the chances that the appeals court, who is also going to be feeding from the same trough of incentives, is going to overturn that decision? I'd say slim to none. That's why you have to go with the Constitution from the get-go, and you have to stay on the Constitution, because none of the statutory stuff is going to help you, because it's all part of the corrupt corporate system. And basically, I mean, it's a sad thing, but our system, our court system, was hijacked a long, long time ago, and it's only gotten worse as time is going on. And the further away from the Constitution the people's minds have gotten, the easier it is for the system to continue to rape and plunder, and that's what it does on a daily basis.
All right, let's take this.
So
up.
going forward, guys, what we're going to do is we're going to teach them basic case scenarios and how to use the proper linguistics to be
Yes.
able to defend themselves properly in a court of law. And as long as they stick to the script and they have the proper affidavit represented, they should be okay.
They should be okay, yes, if they know the material. They have to know the material, Mel, okay?
And we're going to give some background on that too.
And
We're going
we're-
to teach about the Constitution as well.
We're giving all of this right now. Put up exhibit.
Perfect.
I think it's
We'll
time.
get
It's
into it right now.
4:25. It's over an hour. It's over an
Okay,
hour.
well, I guess we're about at an hour, Mel. When do you want to?
You keep going. Whenever the first class is over, if the class is an hour and 35 minutes or an
Okay.
hour and 45
Now,
minutes, so be it.
We'll keep going.
I have an engagement tomorrow afternoon, so we might have to do some of this and include that for the second class, because I have
We'll
to do
work
some of
around
that.
your schedule and we'll make it happen. And
Okay.
we'll do, if you want to do it later in the afternoon and I got a time slot, we'll put you in there and we'll keep going.
Okay. All right, let's go to exhibit 3 now.
All right, let me get the next one.
Now, based upon what you just heard, which probably most of you have never heard before because this is not broadcast. The system is not going to broadcast this information to you. The system is going to keep this information from you because the system completely and consistently, routinely commits fraud upon the American people and keeps the truth from them, okay? We have to get to the truth, and the only way you get to the truth is by and through the Constitution. Anyone who commits an unconstitutional act has committed a crime, especially if he's a government officer.
Mm-hmm.
And you can hold him liable and responsible for the commission of that unconstitutional act, which is a crime, by and through the power of the Constitution. That's the only way you can do it. You can't hold him responsible by statute.
You can see why.
Because statute is going to get him out of trouble. Remember, the statutes are corporate law for the corporation. The corporation is the United States government, okay? The United States of America,
it's DC.
a corporation located in DC. It is not part of America. It's a separate area, okay? 10 square miles.
10 miles
by
square.
10.
10 miles square. And
That's
it's as
correct.
if, Xerox Corporation is trying to tell you how to live your life. That's the connection there. It is not a part of the organic United States of America. And we've been hoodwinked and deceived and lied to and basically bullied into acting in a manner that is detrimental to us and is destroying not only our freedoms, but will in fact destroy the entire republic if we don't do something about it.
All right, now let's start what we do when we go to court. We hold all government offices pursuant to the constitutional mandates imposed upon them by and through their oaths.
Yes.
Now, a lot of people have heard this, but a lot of people really don't know what it means. Let's explain exactly what this means. First of all, the oath is required by the federal constitution, the state constitution, federal law, state law, and usually local law, whether it be county law or city law. So the oath is definitely required to both the national constitution and the state constitution by all judges, all executive and public officers, and most workers. I don't want to say employees, but most government workers, okay? Article 6, clauses 2 and 3 are one of the most important positions in the entire Constitution. And Margy will read them now.
Okay, this is directly from Article 6, Clause 2. This Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, in other words, following the premises of the Constitution, and all treaties made, or which shall be made under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land. And the judges in every state shall be bound thereby. Anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding, which means that the Constitution supersedes everything else. Okay, even the Constitution itself, if amendments have been added which contradict the original body of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights.
Remember, the Constitution cannot conflict with itself. That's a very, very important consideration. Okay.
Super
So
important.
all of these guys and gals in government who've sworn an oath, affirmed an oath, are required to abide by these constitutional mandates. And it's very clear they must uphold the Constitution as the supreme law to any other form of law, including state law and unconstitutional elements within the amendments. All right. That is a definite requirement. Go ahead.
Clause 3. The senators and representatives before mentioned, and the members of the several state legislatures, and all executive and judicial officers, and that's judges and attorneys, okay, both of the United States and of the several states, shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution, but no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States. Two very important clauses in the Constitution. They set up the Constitution as the supreme law of the land. And supreme means supreme. It's above everything else. And it clearly says that any oath taker is bound to this Constitution by that oath And as such, he has to uphold that Constitution above any other form of lesser law. So when somebody cites a statute or a code or a regulation or some kind of public policy that conflicts with the Constitution is the trump card. It wins, period, end of statement. And every judge is supposed to uphold that. Every public official who's taken an oath and bureaucrat who's taken an oath is supposed to uphold that. And every day they do exactly the opposite because the people don't understand what their duties are and how they have to hold their governments accountable to the Constitution.
We repeat, but we repeat for emphasis.
Yes.
Okay, because it's very important. When we repeat something, you really should listen to that because it's crucial. It's not only important, it's absolutely crucial. Here you have clauses 2 and 3 of Article 6. Okay, they're very clear. All of these public offices are bound by oath to the Constitution. They must uphold the Constitution over any other form of law, including state law, and everything within state law. I don't care what it is, even the state constitution. Anything within that state is superseded by the Constitution, okay? Now, as soon as they take the oath, they come out and they break the oath right here, and they defy the rights of the people. They defy the Constitution. They war against the Constitution, which is committing treason against the Constitution. And one of the definitions of treason is warring against the Constitution and giving comfort to and aid to the enemies. Well, who are the enemies? The enemies are the ones who oppose the Constitution. They are the enemies. We call them domestic enemies, but they're enemies across the board. And this is what we have to do. We have to get these people out of office, and we can get them out of office if the American people will do what we've done in New Mexico and elsewhere, okay? I don't know of anyone else. I mean, I'd love to know of thousands of people who have removed politicians from office, but I don't know of anyone else who has. If anyone out there knows of ordinary people who've removed politicians from office under the power and the authority of the Constitution, please contact us. We'd love to speak with you. I don't know of any. I wish I did. In New Mexico, we removed about 4 dozen.
Yeah, as we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, and one of them was a preeminent judge who was he was the head judge of that court, and he was the most powerful man in northern New Mexico. And if you know anything about northern New Mexico, you know what went on there, what's going on there right now. And it has been for some time. And he was an avowed enemy of ours. He called us constitutional idiots. He said, I'm going to get those constitutional idiots. I'm going to put them away. Well, as it turned out, a holding company brought suit against Margy. We won't get into it now. We'll talk about it a little later, but I'll just give you a brief idea as to what happened. The holding company, which was the 4th largest in the country at that time, brought a case against Margy, which was an unjust case. Okay. And we said, no, we're not caving. We're going to fight you. All right. The judge who was assigned to our case was a rare constitutional judge who upheld every constitutional case we ever had before him, all of them, in Las Vegas, New Mexico. Well, the system and the bank didn't want that judge on the case. So some political pressure, apparently, I can't prove this, but some political pressure and corporate pressure was put upon the court. And our avowed enemy all of a sudden
became the presiding judge.
Yeah, out of thin air, he's the presiding judge. And he vowed to get us. As a matter of fact, he hired someone to kill us. And we'll talk about that
later too.
I'm getting to the bottom line here. So this judge, our avowed enemy, figured he was going to really railroad us. We hit him with the Constitution so hard, he didn't know what the hell to do, okay? Because he never heard this before. Judges don't even know the Constitution. Now, some do. Some judges know the Constitution. None of them follow it. Most of them don't even know it. We hit him so hard that he wound up dismissing the case against the corporation, okay? And then when the corporation hired other attorneys to overturn his decision, he said, no, I'm not reversing my opinion. Metris has a problem, and it's not with Miss Flynn, it's with your lawyers. They're terrible.
He said, we're done here. Bye. Click. That
So
was
this
that.
enemy, absolute enemy of ours, was one of the most powerful guys in the entire court system in the entire state, but definitely the most powerful guy in northern New Mexico, and had friends everywhere.
Yeah.
Was caught. We put him in a vice, okay? He had no escape position, all right? If we had used statutes, codes, rules, and regulations, he would have had 5,000 escape positions. The Constitution gave him none. Now, he thought because he ruled in our favor that that was over. No. We filed complaints with him against the Judicial
Standards Commission.
With the Judicial Standards Commission, and he was removed from office 15 years early. Okay, so if we can do it, you can do it.
Yeah.
All right, that's what.
It's not rocket science, guys. It's just really simple common sense and commitment to stay the course until you get it done.
Yeah,
really is.
Let's go on to the next one. Exhibit 4.
Okay, hang on.
Now, as Margy said earlier, there are consequences for public officials when they violate their oaths, when they violate due process and the rights of the people, okay? But very few people know about those consequences, and as far as we know, no one in the country uses them. No one except us and our people. I wish everyone in the country were using our methods now and would use this position we're putting on the screen, because your success rate before the courts would increase dramatically. All right. We don't support the 14th Amendment, Section 1.
In toto, yeah.
Okay, Section 1, because it's unconstitutional. And if you know Section 1 again, it makes all Americans U.S. citizens.
Or at least implies it, okay, because it goes to what happened after the so-called Civil War was ended and they ended slavery and they gave the slaves rights. But they didn't see its limited privileges and immunities. It's not inherent, unlimited, unalienable rights, which is our birthright as Americans. So that's what we stand on when we go to court, is our unlimited, unalienable, inherent rights, not the limited privileges and immunities that the government gave to the poor people that were slaves after the War of Northern Aggression ended.
However, that included all people in America, and we were dubbed U.S. citizens or United States citizens when under the original Constitution, we are citizens of the United States of America. And I repeat, the Constitution cannot conflict with itself. This was a conflict with the original Constitution. And number two, if the Constitution, if the Constitution is to be changed, it must be changed pursuant to the statements and guarantees within the Constitution. And that was not done when the second Constitution, the fraudulent Constitution of 1871, was created. All right, so here's the 14th Amendment, Section 3.
Okay, this is what we call the constitutional remedy for constitutional violations. Section 3, no person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of president and vice president or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state, who, having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States or as a member of any state legislature or as an executive or judicial officer of any state, to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. But Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such disability. Now, that's a lot of language that simply means this. When a public official who has taken an oath to support the Constitution goes against his oath by violating the rights of an American citizen, denying him due process, whatever offended the Constitution, that officer, upon that unconstitutional actions, vacates his office.
Lawfully.
He's lawfully out because he's no longer fit to hold public office because he betrayed his oath to the Constitution, which in essence is a betrayal of the public trust. Now, the second part of the consequences of that action is Section 4. And it's a lot of words again, but it's important that you know them and know what it means. the validity of the public debt of the United States authorized by law, including debts incurred for payment of pensions and bounties for services in suppressing insurrection or rebellion shall not be questioned, but neither the United States nor any state shall assume or pay any debt or obligation incurred in aid of insurrection or rebellion against the United States, or any claim for the loss or emancipation of any slave, but all such debts, obligations, and claims shall be held illegal and void. So anybody who violates the Constitution, perjures his oath, commits sedition and insurrection, and is no longer able to collect public funds. So an officer who has violated his oath vacates his office and he forfeits his salary and his pensions and all his benefits because of the fact that he betrayed his oath and he warred against the Constitution. That's what that means. Okay. That's the simple method of pulling public officers out of office who do not uphold their oaths. And we've done it numerous times. And a lot of people say, well, I don't know what to do. They won't do anything. I can't go to court because I don't know how to talk for myself and I can't afford a lawyer. Well, you can use this method and you can put it upon the public officials who are supposed to be serving you that this person violated his oath, violated your rights, perjured his oath. He's out of office. I want you to remove him. And lawfully, the best person to do that would be the sheriff. However, I think we probably can all acknowledge that most of the sheriffs in this country are idiots. They don't know the Constitution.
They're criminals.
They are not.
Idiots.
They
They're
are
criminals.
not performing pursuant to their oath, and they are the constitutional law officers. They are the only law enforcement personnel that are authorized in the Constitution is your sheriff. They're the highest authority in their county. But so much of that has been corporatized and put into an administrative soup that even the sheriffs don't know what their full capacities are. They have more authority in their county than anybody, including the feds. They can kick the feds out of their county if they're there to persecute the citizens. But most sheriffs either don't know this or don't want to acknowledge
They
it.
don't care. The sheriffs are part of the system. They're part of the corporate
Yeah.
system. They make a ton of money. They run a lot of drugs.
Oh,
I
yeah.
hate to say it, but they do.
It's true.
Yeah. And, they're not good people. Now, are there good people within the sheriffs?
Sure.
Yeah, of course
Sure.
there are. Here and there, you'll find some good sheriffs. You'll find some good cops. But there's so few that they don't even show up in any measurement brigade. Anyway, let's give the bottom line on Section 3 here. Anytime any public officer, whoever he is, a senator, a representative, a mayor, a judge, I don't care who he is or she is, anytime they violate their oath, all right, number one, they're perjuring their oath. Number two, they're violating the Constitution. Number three, they're warring against the Constitution. They're committing insurrection and sedition against the Constitution. Therefore, lawfully, pursuant to Section 3, they vacate their offices lawfully. As soon as they do it, as soon as they commit this crime, which is a crime, because the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. When you take an oath to the Constitution and you violate that oath and you violate the Constitution, you're committing a crime. Okay? So lawfully, that guy or that gal is out of office, and all duties of office are null and void.
They can't
Anything that
execute them.
guy or gal does from that point on is null and void because they had no authority of the office to conduct any business of the office. Okay.
And they have no immunity. A lot of them claim immunity. Oh, I did this because it was my duty as a police officer or sheriff or whatever. No, once they vacate their office, they are standing naked. They do not have the garment of the office over them to give them any type of immunity for their actions. And that's very important because sometimes people find it necessary to press criminal charges or to sue or both. And these people don't have any defense because they have violated their oaths and they've stepped outside of the lawful scope of their limited delegated duties.
That's correct. And when you go to Section 4, since they've committed insurrection and sedition against the Constitution, they violated their oaths, and they're not in office, they're not eligible to collect any salary and pension. They're out. Okay? All of these guys and gals across the country are lawfully out of office. None of them are lawfully eligible to collect any monies, but yet we leave them in office?
Mhm.
No,
It's on us.
there's a problem with that. Okay, we have to get a lot smarter as American citizens and the American people and realize our rights and start taking action against those who are violating our rights.
Okay.
Now let's go to our next one, which is 5.
All right, hang on a second. Do a little housekeeping here.
What the Constitution says is authentic and enforceable. What the Constitution does not authorize is prohibited by the Constitution. All right. Let's take a look at Article 1, Section 1 of the Constitution. Go ahead.
Okay, very simple. All legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States, which shall consist of a Senate and House of Representatives. That's it. All legislative powers. That means no one else has the authority to create law. Not the judge, okay? Not these, what we call administrative agencies, bureaucracies, NGOs, policymakers. None of them have any constitutional lawful authority to create law except for Congress, okay? And in the states, it would be the state legislatures, okay?
As I said, what is authorized in the Constitution is valid and enforceable. What is not authorized in the Constitution is prohibited by the Constitution. So all legislative power is vested in Congress, not vested in the president, okay? Not vested in the judges, not vested in Fauci, not vested in the CDC, not vested in any of these organizations, these NGO organizations or corporations that have fired millions of people because they wouldn't take the shot. They have no constitutional authority to create any law, rule, or regulation binding upon the American people. No agency of government, no NSA, FBI, IRS has any lawful authority to create anything binding upon the American people. Did you hear that? No agency of government, none, have any lawful authority to create any law, rule, regulation, or what have you that's binding and enforceable upon the American people.
Yeah, it's that simple, guys. And I know this is going to sit maybe a little crooked in your heads at first because you're used to basically being obedient to all of these regulations that are imposed upon you every day. Traveling down the road, or trying to find a parking place that doesn't have a handicap sticker on it, whatever. These are not law. We may give common agreement to some things because of the courtesy or perhaps the safety. You don't want to be driving at 65 miles an hour on a road that's narrow and curvy and has children, dogs, cats, whatever. That's common sense. But, the founding fathers presumed that we were adults and that we would have enough of that common sense that we would act in a manner that was according to the circumstances and situations that we were in. That means less government, okay? More independence upon the people and more personal responsibility. That's the key. It's personal responsibility. And the Constitution really would encourage personal responsibility, not only as individuals, but as citizens and part of this great United States of America. That's our duty as citizens, as self-governing citizens, to exercise our lawful inherent political authority and keep our government in the box that we made for it by and through the Constitution.
Now, we would love to generate through Mel and these programs, this series, an awareness within the people, a consciousness within the people that grows daily. And we ask you to share these videos with your friends and ask them to share the videos with their friends, carried forward. We would like, if we possibly could, to create a grassroots movement in this country to bring constitutional governance back to America. And I think, Mel, it's probably time to end for tonight, and we'll pick it up the next day.
Very cool. This was very informative. I'm getting chills like every 29 seconds. Unbelievable.
Good.
Yeah, I'm telling you right now. So somebody gets into trouble with the laws, the so-called, what would you call it? A bamboozled law system, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And you hire yourself a constitutional attorney that went to school there's really no such thing as a constitutional attorney.
No,
It's an
there isn't.
oxymoron, isn't
It
it?
is an
That's
oxymoron.
correct.
That's what I was going to say. Exactly. Because the attorneys, because of their investiture in the Bar Association, which is basically the British accredited registry. And so the City of London and the Bar Association have sway over what happens in the courts in this country, which is insane. And those guys they're obligated to uphold the bar, and they're obligated to uphold the system. They are not obligated to uphold the best interests of their clients, even though they say that. They don't work for you. They work for
Right.
themselves, the system, and the Bar Association. And when you hire an attorney, the system considers you to be incompetent, as if you were a child or a ward of the court. Okay, that's what happens when you hire an attorney, that you're incompetent to speak for yourself. And think about the implications of that. They're huge.
We have a voracious, unconstitutional feeding system, and it feeds on the American people. It takes their homes, it takes their businesses, it takes their bank accounts, it takes their cars, it takes their kids, it takes their wives, it takes their lives. We have to wake up as a society, an American society, and say, enough is enough. It stops with me.